"You don't need first class," my daughter-in-law said with a smile that never reached her eyes. "Honestly, economy is more than enough for you." My son didn't even look up from his phone. Then she slid my boarding pass across the kitchen counter, like she was doing me a favor. "I mean, we're paying for your ticket," she added. "You should be grateful." Grateful. That word echoed in my head the entire drive home. What neither of them knew was that I hadn't asked them to pay for anything. In fact, I was the one who had secretly paid for the entire family vacation. Every flight, every hotel room, every airport transfer, every dinner reservation, every upgrade. They thought my retirement had left me struggling. They had no idea that after selling my business 18 months earlier, I'd quietly walked away with more money than I'd ever need. I never bragged about it. I never corrected their assumptions. Because money doesn't reveal character, it exposes it. And my son and his wife were about to teach me exactly who they had become. They just didn't realize. I still owned every reservation under my name, including one extra first-class ticket they thought belonged to my grandson. The airline was only one phone call away. And once I made that call, their dream vacation would never leave the runway. This wasn't about a seat. It wasn't about flying first class. It was about the moment your own child starts treating you like excess baggage. And by the time this trip was over, they'd learn what being left behind really felt like. The morning everything unraveled began with something so ordinary that I almost ignored it. My phone buzzed while I was making coffee. It was a message from my daughter-in-law, Melissa. No greeting, no good morning, just a screenshot of the airline seating chart with a single sentence underneath. "Please don't ask the gate agent to move you closer to us. We paid extra so the kids could sit together." I stared at the screen for a long moment before letting out a quiet laugh. The funny part wasn't the message. It was that I had personally selected every one of those seats 3 months earlier when I booked the trip. I remembered sitting at my dining room table with my laptop open, making sure my 2 grandkids would have the window seats because they loved watching the clouds. I had paid nearly $200 extra just so everyone would be comfortable. Then, 2 weeks later, Melissa had called and insisted they wanted to handle the travel expenses themselves. I let her believe it. I never argued. I simply transferred the reservations into an account she could access, while leaving my payment method attached as the primary card. She never noticed. Neither did my son, Ethan. They were too busy congratulating themselves for taking responsibility. A few minutes later, Ethan called. "Hey, Dad!" His voice sounded distracted, like he was talking to me while scrolling through something else. Morning. "So, Melissa said she texted you about the seats." "She did. I hope you're okay with it. I don't remember complaining." "Good." Silence lingered for a second. "You know," he continued, "travel's expensive with kids. We really stretched the budget on this trip." I nearly smiled. "If that's what you believe." "What? Nothing." He sighed. "I just think it's important everyone appreciates the effort we're making." The effort, I almost reminded him that 10 years earlier I'd mortgaged my own lake cabin to help him start the construction company that eventually allowed him to buy the beautiful suburban home he now lived in. I almost reminded him of the nights I skipped vacations, skipped new cars, skipped retirement contributions so he could finish college debt-free. Instead, I simply said, "I appreciate honesty more than effort." What does that mean? You'll understand someday. He ended the call sounding irritated. I finished my coffee in silence. There was a framed picture on the kitchen counter of Ethan when he was 7 years old. We were standing beside an old fishing boat, both covered in mud, both laughing so hard neither of us could stand straight. Back then, if someone had told that little boy he'd one day speak to his father like he was an inconvenience, he would have cried somewhere along the way. Success had replaced gratitude, or maybe Melissa had simply given it permission. 3 days later, we all arrived at the airport. I got there early, as I always did. Years of business travel had taught me one lesson. Airports reward patience and punish arrogance. Melissa arrived 20 minutes later, wearing designer sunglasses despite being indoors. She spotted me sitting quietly near the check-in area. "Oh, you're already here. I've been here a while." She looked at my single leather carry-on. "That's all you're bringing? It's enough." She smiled. "I wish I could travel that light." What she really meant was, "I'm surprised you own something that expensive." Her eyes lingered on the bag for a second longer before she turned away. The kids ran over and hugged me. "Grandpa!" That single word instantly made the morning better. I hugged both of them tightly. Children have a way of loving people without checking their bank account first. Melissa interrupted. "Come on, guys. We have to check our luggage." As we approached the airline counter, I watched something interesting happen. The agent looked at her screen, then at me, then back at the screen again. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." She smiled warmly. "I see you're the primary reservation holder." Melissa froze. "What?" the agent continued. "I'll just need your ID before we check everyone in." Melissa quickly interrupted. "No, I made these reservations." The agent politely shook her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am. According to our system, Mr. Carter created and owns this booking." For the first time all morning, Melissa looked confused. She glanced toward Ethan. He shrugged. "I thought you booked it." "I thought you did." I handed over my driver's license, the agent smiled. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." Within seconds, boarding passes began printing one after another. Melissa reached for them. The agent handed the entire stack to me, a tiny detail, but I noticed Melissa's jaw tighten. So, she forced a laugh. "I guess we all learned something, apparently." The airline employee continued typing. Then she looked up again. "I also see there's one unused first-class reservation attached to this booking." Melissa's eyes widened. "First class?" She turned toward Ethan. "You said there weren't any upgrades left." He frowned. "I thought there weren't." The agent smiled politely. "This reservation has had one confirmed first-class seat reserved since the original booking." Melissa looked directly at me. "You never mentioned that. You never asked. So, who's flying first class?" I looked down at the boarding passes in my hand, then back at her. "I haven't decided yet." The silence that followed was heavier than any suitcase sitting beside us, and for the first time since planning the trip, Melissa realized there were details about this vacation she didn't control. She had no idea that one phone call made the night before had already changed everything. Because while everyone had been sleeping, I'd spoken to the airline's executive customer service desk. Not to complain, not to ask for a favor, just to exercise a right that belonged to the person who had paid for every reservation. The representative had ended the call with one simple sentence. "Certainly, Mr. Carter. The requested ticket has now been canceled." I thanked her, hung up, and slept better than I had in months. The best part? Nobody yet knew which ticket had disappeared. They were about to find out at the security checkpoint. Melissa reached for the boarding passes before I could organize them. "Let me see." I handed her the stack without saying a word. She counted 1, 2, 3, 4. Then she stopped. Her smile disappeared. "There are only 4. Ethan frowned and took the passes from her. "That can't be right." He counted them again. "Dad?" I calmly slipped my passport back into my jacket. The airline printed exactly what was on the reservation. Melissa looked at the check-in agent. "There should be 5 tickets." The agent typed for a moment before looking up. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There are only 4 active passengers on this reservation." "What do you mean active?" "It appears one ticket was voluntarily canceled yesterday evening." Melissa's face turned white. "Canceled by who?" The agent glanced at her monitor. "I'm only authorized to discuss reservation details with the booking owner." Slowly, every pair of eyes turned toward me. Ethan blinked. "Dad," I met his gaze. "Yes? Did you cancel someone's ticket?" "I did." The words landed like a bowling ball on marble. Melissa laughed nervously. "Okay, whose ticket?" "I haven't told you yet." "You've got to be kidding." The children looked from one adult to another, sensing the tension. Ethan lowered his voice. "Dad, this isn't funny. I never intended it to be." Melissa crossed her arms. "If this is because of the first-class seat, you're being incredibly childish." I looked at her calmly. Interesting. What? You think this is about a seat? Then what is it about? It's about respect. She rolled her eyes. Oh, please. That one gesture erased the last bit of hesitation I had been carrying. For years, I had excused little comments. You're old-fashioned. You wouldn't understand. Just let the younger generation handle it. Every holiday, every birthday, every family dinner, 1,000 tiny cuts that never seemed serious on their own, until one day you realized you were bleeding. Ethan stepped closer. Dad, whoever's ticket you canceled, just call them back and fix it. I can. Relief spread across his face. But I'm not going to. His shoulders dropped. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious, Melissa suddenly snapped. This vacation cost us almost $12,000. I couldn't help smiling. No. What? It didn't. What are you talking about? It cost me $12,000. Silence, complete silence. Even the check-in agent stopped typing. Melissa stared at me. I nodded. Every airline ticket. Silence. Every hotel suite, another silence. The rental SUV. Nothing. The Disney VIP passes. Melissa's lips parted. The beach house. Ethan slowly shook his head. No, the dinner reservations. His face lost all color. And the travel insurance, Melissa whispered almost to herself. You said you couldn't afford something this expensive. I never said that. You let us believe. I let you assume. Ethan looked completely stunned. You paid for all of it? I did. Why didn't you tell us? I looked directly into his eyes. Because I wanted to know whether you'd thank me or take me for granted. Nobody spoke. Finally, Melissa tried to recover. If that's true, why would you cancel a ticket? Because gratitude isn't something you demand. She looked genuinely angry now. This is unbelievable. No, I said quietly. What's unbelievable is telling the man paying for your vacation that he should sit in economy and be grateful. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You were eavesdropping? You said it to my face. The memory hit Ethan instantly. He turned toward his wife. You actually said that? Melissa hesitated. I didn't mean it like. You laughed. I interrupted. You looked me in the eyes and laughed. The children stood quietly beside us. My granddaughter reached for my hand. I squeezed it gently. I refused to let them become part of this argument. Ethan rubbed his forehead. Dad. His voice was different now, smaller. I didn't know. You didn't ask. I thought Melissa had booked everything. You thought a lot of things. The airline supervisor approached after noticing the growing crowd. Is everything all right? The check-in agent explained quietly. The supervisor nodded politely. He looked at me. Mr. Carter, since you're the reservation owner, if you'd like, we can still sell another ticket on today's flight. Melissa immediately smiled. Perfect, the supervisor continued. Unfortunately, today's flight is completely sold out. Her smile disappeared. The next available seat is tomorrow afternoon. Melissa's eyes widened. Tomorrow? Yes, ma'am. But our hotel, I'm afraid I can't help with that. She turned desperately toward Ethan. We can't leave me here, I finally spoke. Nobody said it was your ticket. She froze. Everyone froze. Ethan swallowed. Then whose is it? I looked down at the boarding passes one last time. Then I slowly separated one from the stack. I handed it to my grandson. This one's yours. His eyes lit up. I'm flying first class? You sure are, buddy. His face exploded into the biggest smile I'd seen in years. You've never flown first class. No, today's your day. He hugged me so tightly I almost lost my balance. Melissa stared in disbelief. But if he has a ticket, she counted again. 1, 2, 3, 4, then looked up. There was only one person left without a boarding pass. Her own, the realization hit her like a freight train. No, I nodded once. Yes, you canceled my ticket. I canceled the extra ticket. Tears of frustration filled her eyes. You planned this. For exactly 24 hours. This is cruel. I looked at her with complete calm. No, cruel is making someone feel unwanted while spending their money. The terminal had gone almost silent around us. Travelers walking past slowed down, sensing something important was happening. Melissa looked at Ethan. Tell him. He didn't move. Ethan. He looked at his wife, then at me, then slowly lowered his eyes. For the first time in years, he couldn't defend her. And deep down, he knew exactly why. Ethan stood there with his mouth slightly open, as if he wanted to say something but couldn't decide which truth would hurt less. Melissa was waiting for him to rescue her. He always had. If she complained about a waiter, he demanded the manager. If she argued with a neighbor, he took her side. If she rolled her eyes at me during Thanksgiving dinner, he pretended not to notice. This time, he stayed silent. "Dad," he finally whispered. I looked at him. "Did you really have to do this at the airport?" I smiled sadly. "No." His face relaxed for a split second. I could have canceled it 3 months ago. The relief vanished. "But then your wife wouldn't have understood why." Melissa's eyes burned with anger. "So, this is revenge?" "No. It's humiliation." "No. Then what is it?" "It's a consequence." Those words seemed to echo through the terminal. Consequences. Children learn them when they're 5. Adults usually don't expect them. Melissa took a deep breath and forced herself to sound calm. "You've embarrassed me in front of strangers." I looked around. "No, you did." "You embarrassed yourself the moment you treated generosity like an obligation." For a moment, she had nothing to say. Then she tried a different approach. Her voice softened. "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings." It sounded rehearsed, like someone apologizing to end an argument instead of acknowledging the pain. I shook my head. "That's not an apology." Her eyebrows knitted together. "What do you mean?" "You're sorry I was hurt." "Yes, but you're not sorry for what you did." She looked away. That was my answer. The airline supervisor cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, boarding begins in 45 minutes. "Thank you." He nodded and quietly walked away. Melissa suddenly grabbed Ethan's arm. "Just buy another ticket." He pulled out his phone. After a minute of searching, his face fell. "The only seats left are tomorrow." He kept scrolling. "And they're over $2,300. Melissa stared at him. "What?" "That's the last-minute fare." She laughed nervously. "Fine, buy it." He didn't answer. "Well?" He slowly locked his phone. "I can't." "What do you mean you can't? The business account is tied up until Monday. So use savings." He hesitated. "There isn't enough." She blinked. "What?" He looked embarrassed. "I used most of it to cover payroll last month." Melissa looked stunned. "You told me we were fine. I thought we'd collect 2 invoices before this trip." "You thought?" Their conversation was unfolding exactly the way I feared it eventually would. Not because they lacked money, because they had built a lifestyle around appearances, luxury, SUV, private school Dunnar handbags, weekend wine tours, expensive dinners posted online with captions about living our best life. Meanwhile, their emergency savings barely covered one unexpected airline ticket. Melissa turned to me. "You knew." "I suspected. You planned this because you knew we couldn't afford another ticket." "I planned this because I knew you believed kindness had no price." She looked like she wanted to scream. Instead, tears rolled down her cheeks, real ones this time, not from guilt, from panic. Then something unexpected happened. My granddaughter walked over to her mother. "It's okay, Mommy." Melissa knelt. "We'll fix it." The little girl smiled innocently. "Grandpa always fixes things." That sentence hit every adult standing there because she believed it, without question. To her, Grandpa wasn't the old man who should be grateful. He was the safe place, the one who always showed up. The one who never forgot birthdays, never missed dance recitals, never broke promises. Children don't remember who sits in first class. They remember who made them feel loved. Melissa hugged her daughter tightly, then looked at me. For the first time since I'd known her, there wasn't anger in her eyes. There was shame. Quiet, uncomfortable, undeniable shame. She stood slowly. "I owe you an apology." I said nothing, a real one. The terminal noise seemed to disappear. "I've treated you like you existed to help us." She swallowed hard. "I expected your time." Another pause. "Your money." Another. "Your patience." She looked directly into my eyes. "And I stopped seeing you as Ethan's father." My heart softened, just a little. You became. She wiped away another tear. A convenience. Ethan closed his eyes. I let it happen. He didn't say it to defend himself. He said it because it was true. I should have stopped it years ago. Neither of us spoke. He walked toward me, not confidently, not proudly, like the little boy from that fishing picture who knew he'd broken something precious. I'm sorry, Dad. Those 3 words carried more weight than every excuse he'd ever made. I forgot who taught me how to become the man I am. I looked at him for several long seconds. Then I asked quietly, "Did you?" His eyes filled with tears. No. Then why did you act like it? He couldn't answer, because there wasn't one, just silence, the kind that forces people to face themselves. My grandson tugged on my sleeve. Grandpa, yeah, buddy? Are we still going? I smiled. We are. He looked at his parents. All of us? I looked at Melissa, then at Ethan. The decision wasn't about punishment anymore. It was about whether they had truly learned the lesson, or were simply sorry because they had been caught. And I realized the next choice I made would determine not just this vacation, but the future of our family. I looked at Melissa for a long moment. Then I looked at Ethan. Neither of them spoke. For the first time in years, they weren't trying to convince me they were right. They were simply waiting. That was new. I slowly reached into my jacket pocket. Melissa's eyes followed my hand. So, what happens now? She asked quietly. I pulled out my phone. There are 2 ways this ends. Ethan frowned. What do you mean? I can call the airline, pay the last-minute fare, and have them place your mother. I caught myself and smiled. Your wife on tomorrow's flight. Melissa's shoulders dropped. Or, I continued, I can use the travel insurance that I purchased. Both of them stared at me. The what? The travel insurance. Melissa blinked. I thought we didn't buy any. You didn't. I did. The airline supervisor, who had remained nearby, nodded politely. Mr. Carter is correct. His policy includes same-day ticket replacement under certain circumstances. Melissa looked completely confused. So, I can still go today? I looked at her calmly. If I authorize it. Another silence, she whispered. Please, not I deserve it, not you have to. Just, please. It was the first genuine request I'd ever heard from her. I thought about every Christmas dinner, every birthday, every sarcastic remark, every moment I'd smiled just to keep peace in the family. Then I looked at my grandchildren. They were holding hands, watching every second. Children learn how to treat people by watching adults. If I chose revenge alone, they would remember revenge. If I chose accountability, followed by grace, they would remember something much more valuable. I dialed the airline representative. Good morning, Mr. Carter, the familiar voice answered. Good morning. How may I help you today? I'd like to reinstate the canceled passenger. I can certainly do that. There was a brief pause. The fare difference has been waived under your platinum travel policy. Melissa covered her mouth. No additional charge, the agent continued. The boarding pass will print at the counter. Thank you. My pleasure, Mr. Carter. I ended the call. The check-in printer immediately came to life. A fresh boarding pass slid out. The supervisor picked it up, walked over, and handed it to Melissa. She stared at it for several seconds before looking at me. You still did this for me? I smiled gently. No, she looked confused. I did it for them. I nodded toward the children. They deserve a vacation without remembering the day their family fell apart. Tears streamed down her face. This time, they weren't tears of frustration. They were tears of humility without saying a word. She stepped forward and hugged me, not the quick, awkward hug people give for appearances. A real one, the kind that says everything words cannot. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know. No, she pulled back. I mean, I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving that I meant it. I believed her, not because of what she said, because of how she said it. Ethan walked over next. He didn't hug me immediately. Instead, he reached into his wallet, pulled out a folded check. Dad, he handed it to me. It was made out for $12,000. What is this? The vacation. I smiled. You don't owe me. I do know. I insist. I folded the check once, then tore it cleanly in half, then again. Tiny pieces floated into the nearby trash can. Ethan stared at me. You spent your whole life trying to repay me. He looked confused. When? Every time you became a decent man. His eyes filled with tears. You don't owe parents for loving you. He couldn't speak. You only owe your own children the same love. The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal. Flight 284 to Maui is now boarding first-class passengers. My grandson looked at me excitedly. That's us! I laughed. That's you. He looked at Melissa. Mom? She smiled through her tears. You go with Grandpa. He grabbed my hand. As we walked toward the boarding gate, I glanced back one last time. Ethan had his arm around Melissa, not because she needed rescuing, because they were finally standing beside each other instead of in front of one another. Halfway down the jet bridge, my grandson looked up at me. Grandpa? Yeah? Why did you give Mom her ticket back? I smiled. Because people should pay for their mistakes. He nodded slowly. She didn't pay. Oh, I squeezed his little hand. She did. How? She had to admit she was wrong. He thought about that for a moment, then smiled. That's harder than money. I laughed. It usually is. A week later, we returned home. Something had changed. Not overnight, not magically, but genuinely. Melissa no longer expected me to babysit without asking. She stopped making jokes about my age. She called just to check on me, even when she didn't need anything. Ethan started inviting me to lunch. Just the two of us, like we used to. 3 months later, my birthday arrived. When I pulled into Ethan's driveway, I expected another family dinner. Instead, I found nearly 40 people waiting in the backyard. Old friends, former co-workers, neighbors. Even a few people from the construction company Ethan owned. A banner stretched across the fence. To the man who always put family first. Melissa walked to the microphone. I used to think generosity was something you accepted. She looked directly at me. Now I know it's something you honor. She smiled through happy tears. The greatest gift my father-in-law ever gave us wasn't this vacation. She paused. It was the chance to become the family we should have been all along. Everyone applauded. Ethan walked over carrying a small wooden box. Inside was the original boarding pass from that canceled ticket. It had been framed behind glass. Below it was a brass plaque that read, "Respect isn't included in the price of a ticket. It's earned before the journey begins." It hangs on my office wall to this day. Visitors often ask why I'd frame an old airline boarding pass. I simply smile because they see a piece of paper. I see the day my family stopped treating me like extra baggage and finally remembered that the man they almost left behind had been carrying them all along. The vacation ended 7 days later. The beaches were beautiful. The sunsets were unforgettable. But the moment everyone remembered wasn't the first-class seat. It was what happened on our last night. We gathered around a long table, overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The kids laughed. The waves rolled onto the shore. A local musician played softly in the background. Then Ethan stood. He tapped his glass. I want everyone's attention. The entire restaurant fell silent. He turned toward me. Dad, when I was growing up, I thought you were the strongest man in the world. He swallowed hard. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the man who sacrificed everything for me and started seeing someone who would always forgive me, no matter how badly I treated him. His voice cracked. I confused unconditional love with unlimited tolerance. You could have heard a pin drop. Melissa stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. I spent years believing respect was automatic, that because you loved us, you'd keep giving, keep helping, and keep staying quiet. She looked directly into my eyes. I wasn't raising my children to appreciate their grandfather. She paused. I was teaching them to take him for granted. She turned to the grandchildren. I will never let that happen again. The kids walked over and wrapped their little arms around me. No one at the table had dry eyes. Then I slowly stood. I need to tell all of you something. Every face turned toward me. The canceled airline ticket, I smiled faintly, was never about revenge. It was a mirror that showed every one of us who we'd become. I reached into my jacket and pulled out a folded envelope. I've carried this for almost a year, Ethan frowned. What is it? My new will. The table froze. I rewrote it the night after you told me to fly economy and be grateful. Melissa's face lost all color. I realized something that night. I wasn't afraid of dying. I was afraid of leaving everything I'd built to people who no longer valued the person who built it. Silence. I was prepared to donate nearly every dollar to children's hospitals, veterans' charities, and scholarships for kids who had never met their grandparents. Ethan closed his eyes. Melissa covered her mouth. But this week, I looked at both of them. I watched two people choose humility over pride. I watched parents apologize in front of their children. I watched my son become the man I raised. And I watched my daughter-in-law become the woman my grandchildren deserve to admire. I slowly tore the envelope in half. Then again, tiny pieces drifted onto the table like snow. I'm not changing my will because you inherited my money. I smiled. I'm changing it because you earned back something far more valuable, my trust. At that moment, the restaurant erupted into applause. Not because of the money, because everyone watching understood the real victory. The inheritance had never been the house, or the investments, or the millions. It was the family. Years later, after I was gone, my grandson, now a grown man, stood in front of that same framed boarding pass hanging in his own home. His son asked, "Dad, why did Great-Grandpa keep this old airline ticket?" He smiled. Because it reminds our family of the day we almost lost the best man we ever knew. The ticket wasn't canceled to leave someone behind. It was canceled to make sure no one ever forgot who had carried this family for decades. He gently touched the frame, and from that day forward, no one in our family ever measured a person's worth by the seat they sat in. We measured it by the sacrifices they made when no one was looking. Because the greatest revenge isn't making people suffer. It's making them face the cost of their own choices and giving them one chance to become better before it's too late. Some flights change your destination. That one changed an entire family forever.